Welcome to Entanglement Radio, transcendent talk for the conscious mind. Join us for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science, new thought, and conscious healing. Explore the potential and infinite possibilities of what it means to be human with some of the best guests in radio. At Entanglement Radio, it is all connected. Now, here is your host, Angela Levesque, on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Welcome and good day. You're listening to Entanglement Radio with Angela Levesque right here on the OMTimes Radio Network. I'm coming to you live today from the beautiful foothills of the Rocky Mountains here in Boise, Idaho. Man, my intro there says we like to talk about potential and possibilities, and that's exactly what we are doing today. I have James Conner on the show, and if you were reading OMTimes last week, you would have seen his face on the cover, so I'm very excited to have him here. He is the author of the Superyogi Scenario, and yes, I've been waiting to have this conversation probably my whole adult life. We're just talking about, are we emerging superheroes? And, just case in point, next week I have maybe the closest person I know to a real-life superhero on the program. Her name's Lisa Martin Niami, and she calls herself an ascension portal. She is the most empathic and psychic person I have ever met. She can just kind of retrieve information from dimensions I didn't even know existed. So that's going to be a great show. We're going to be talking about the light, the dark, and the void with her next week. But as I mentioned, I'm getting all excited. I'm getting all ahead of myself. If you want to learn more about myself, my show, you want to hear past shows, you can find those all at hestiahealth.com. You can find me on Facebook and on Twitter at Hestia Health. And my winner of this week's or this month's intuitive reading is Carla, and she knows who she is. I have contacted her, and so yes, if you would like to get in on that, I do give away a free intuitive reading every month, and all you have to do is go to my Facebook page or go to Twitter and hashtag Entanglement Radio. Just say hello and I will put your name in the hat, and like I said, I'll be giving out a free intuitive reading every month. So Carla's our big winner. So as I mentioned, we are talking about are we emerging superheroes with author James Conner. You know, it's funny, my son and I, when he was little, he's 7 now, and we love talking about superheroes. Like, who doesn't right now? It's everywhere in our collective consciousness. And we decided that my name would be Chakra Girl because, I am an energy healer and I do a lot of work with the chakras. And so we came up with these, I think, just expanded versions of some of the stuff I already do. I actually teach a class on understanding the energy field. And when my son asked me, what are you going to do tonight? I say, well, I'm going to go teach people how to use the force. And that's the kind of stuff. I think we are right on the precipice. I don't know if we're going to be lifting planes out of the swamp like Yoda anytime soon, but I see more and more people interested in this. And I see, the work, if you look at some of the psychic abilities and people who can speak with dead people and all of those kind of things, like we are on the precipice of being able to do something great. And I think, that's probably the difference between people having gifts and abilities and superheroes is ultimately how we use it. But I just think that, we just like I said, there's so much potential and possibility within our world, within humans in general, and I just think it's such an exciting time. So we're going to be talking about that here. Let me introduce my guest. James Conner began writing supernatural thrillers when he won a Raven Society Award at the University of Virginia in support of his creative writing. But it wasn't until 2 decades later, after giving up a successful business career as the CEO of a New York City advertising agency and completing a 3-year isolated meditation and yoga retreat in the high desert mountains of Arizona, that Conner felt compelled to publish stories that allow readers to experience deep wisdom gained from his 15 years of detailed Buddhist and yoga training. Following in his footsteps of his storytelling idols, C.S. Lewis, Neil Gaiman, and the Wachowskis, Conner is a firm believer in combining philosophy with fun. He is also the founder of GoBeyond.org and travels teaching Buddhist and yoga philosophy with an emphasis on meditation. So with that, I feel honored and blessed to welcome James Conner to the program. Hi, James. How you doing?
Angela, I'm really happy to be here with you.
Can you tell I'm happy too? I think it's just such a fascinating topic. As I said in my little monologue there, like when I'm doing energy work, when anybody's doing energy work, we're using the force. We are taking this pranic energy and we're being able to use it for healing purposes, for understanding ourselves better. And I just think it's such an exciting time. Do you agree?
I think it's an amazing, exciting time. And it's a great time to be a sincere spiritual practitioner because we have access to all these authentic texts that have been translated from the last 25 centuries. So I'm really excited about what's happening in our culture right now.
And, I've had other guests just say, some of these texts that were kept a secret for so long and, only allowed to those people who, had very dedicated study are now being just opened up to the general public. Like it seems like, we are ripe for these kind of changes and explosion of human potential.
It's just an amazing opportunity. I just got out of a 3-year meditation retreat. And so I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have access to the internet. I didn't have any news from the outside world for 3 years.
Wow.
But what I did have was some of the greatest meditation texts written in the last 25 centuries. And it's true what you're saying for many of the historic reasons and also for some of the caste reasons. If I were born even in America, 30 years ago, I wouldn't have had access to these materials. So it's just a great time.
It is. So as a child, were you interested in comic books and graphic novels and superheroes?
Yes, absolutely. And I look out now at our culture, and I'd have to say that our culture currently is even more excited about superheroes in the movies, in the TV shows, in the graphic novels. And I think the reason for that is as we become more and more connected to the troubles that people are having across the globe, we want to see suffering lessen. We want to see good triumph over evil. And I just think that's awesome. It's a real heart desire. But I was going to say, but because that's the emotional desire, there needs to be the next evolution of the superhero. Because right now, it looks like you have to be a billionaire with access to cool tech or from another planet or caught in some strange laboratory mishap to be a superhero. And what we're interested in is how we can all become a superhero ourselves. And that has everything to do with growing in love and wisdom. And I think stories like the Superyogi Scenario represent the next evolution of the superhero story.
And I couldn't agree with you more because when you look at some of the ones that are pervading popular culture, they're arrogant. They're other than maybe, Captain America, who's got, very a big sense of integrity and a true heart and stuff. But if you look at people like Iron Man, who, is arrogant and, he's super intelligent, but there's no sense of spirituality. It's, he helps out because, he can, but it's not really, that isn't an intrinsic part of his heart and his, his life philosophy. And so that's what I love. So let's start a little bit. Let's, if you can just give my listeners an idea of what is the Superyogi Scenario about?
Well, it's a fresh take on the superhero story. And so instead of supernatural powers coming from lab mishaps or radioactive spider bites, powers are going to come from yoga and meditation, as described in ancient texts like the Yoga Sutra and other Buddhist texts from the early centuries. And so using this metaphor of superheroes, the novel explores what makes somebody a hero or what makes somebody a villain and clarifies what we can all do to develop the superhero within ourselves and make the world a better place.
And it's interesting. You start the beginning of the book is you list some facts and you actually say that the sutras talk about superpowers.
Yes, I mean, this was something that was a huge surprise to me. Um, in the Superyogi scenario, I draw from a lot of authentic verses, and there's like 18 verses that are directly pulled from the Yoga Sutra. And as many of your listeners know, the Yoga Sutra is the root text for all the yoga lineages. It was written around 200 AD by Master Patanjali, and it describes the yogic path to enlightenment in 4 chapters. And the first chapter is about why you have to meditate. All the deep transformations of heart and mind happen in stages of deep meditation. The second chapter is about practices that support good meditation, like not harming other people, and also like the physical asana poses that we know and love. But the third chapter is called the chapter on mystic powers, and it describes transformations of mind that equate to supernormal abilities. And so 11% of the verses in the Yoga Sutra are actually about how to develop superpowers, like how do you learn to read minds? How do you learn to fly in the sky and become invisible, walk on water, etc.? And so when you see these things, it's quite stunning because they give you the precise instructions for how that is achieved. And so I was able to take those verses and take the wisdom behind those verses and use that to help readers have an authentic experience of what those transformations might look like.
I absolutely love it. Well, we're going to be coming up on a break here. And yes, I just really think that is where we're heading. When you look at our culture and how many people are, waking up in this time. So we'll talk about more about that when we return here with James Conner. You're listening to Entanglement Radio with Angela Levesque right here on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome to The Gathering Around My Kitchen Table on Equilarium FM, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join my guests as we integrate spirituality into everyday reality with vibrant conversations, inspired interviews, and my latest channeled guidance to inspire and brighten your day. I'm Claire Johnson, and together we'll be raising vibrations across the nations.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. What if business could be fun? What if business is the adventure of living? What are you choosing? Where do you do business that makes it easier, more fun, or more joyful for you? We'd love to see where you do business. Connect with us on Instagram at Joy of Business or Twitter at Joy of Business, and share your pictures with hashtags BusinessDoneWhere and Joy of Business. Let's change the world with business.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Entanglement Radio with Angela Levesque right here on the OMTimes Radio Network. My guest again today is James Conner, and if you were reading OMTimes last week, he was on the cover of that magazine, and he is the author of the Superyogi Scenario. So another game that my son and I play is we talk about one day he really would like to go to space, and so we design our own planets. And so my planet is a group of meditators that come together that have such a an understanding of consciousness and, how consciousness actually creates our material world, that they create this planet of pure peace and love. And his planet, of course, he developed, it had war and all that. And I thought, if you could start from scratch and if you could build anything you want, wouldn't you want to create it in the most beautiful way possible? And that's a whole interesting debate and conversation, especially to have with a 6-year-old. But consciousness is a really important, and the understanding of the true nature of reality and illusion is a really important part of the book. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Well, first I want to say I love your planet.
Me too.
And I hope more of us get to visit your planet. That is just beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Your question about consciousness and the interconnection between our mind and how we experience the world is the challenge of our times. I don't think the challenge of our times is to develop the next social media app or to develop a faster smartphone. When you discover the connection between your mind and how you experience reality, then you finally uncover the source of all power. And this is the main idea that the Yoga Sutra is discussing. It's a beautiful verse that opens the Yoga Sutra. It says, Yogesh Chitta Virti Nirodha. Yogesh means yoga. Chitta is mind. Virti is to twist. And Nirodha is to stop. And so what it means is the purpose of yoga is to stop how we twist things around and don't see that the world is coming from us. So that's a big statement. So Angela, we better prove that. Will you play a game with me for a second?
Sure.
I want you to picture someone who you love, someone who you think has wonderful qualities.
Okay.
Does everyone in the world see them the same way?
No.
Wonderful. And you can see it just in that quick little thought experiment. You see your person. They see their person. It depends on perspective. And so that person is not broadcasting in the same way to everyone. Because you have unique causes in your heart, you experience them in a unique way. Now that is a profound statement. The world isn't coming at you. It's coming from you. When you can get in that wisdom, you untwist all the ignorance and all the mistakes that lead to so much suffering in the world. And that's how the suffering comes to an end. So it's an incredible wisdom.
And do you feel you do? You actually have in your book, one of the characters is a physics professor, and he comes and talks to them to help them, broaden their idea, this understanding of what you were just talking about. And so it is well supported. We're seeing it more and more showing up in our understanding of quantum physics. And that to me is just this beautiful marriage of science and spirituality.
The truth will be the truth, no matter what the method of inquiry is. So we have these profound realizations that meditators from the ages have come to see that connection between mind and the experience of the world. But then in the last century, quantum physics has discovered the same thing experimentally. And the classic example, and there's many examples, but the classic example is the phenomena of wave-particle duality. What they found in quantum physics is if you look at something as a wave, you measure it as a wave, it behaves like a wave, like ripples on a pond. It's an energetic potential, and it can exist anywhere on the wave. But if you measure it as a particle, it's suddenly a very specific particle. And then they go and say, well, what is it? And they realize it depends on perspective. So the punchline in quantum physics is there is not an objective physical reality. It always exists in interdependence between the subject and the object. And that's the same wisdom that the Yoga Sutra says. That's the same wisdom that the Buddha says in the Heart Sutra and such. So I love that we are coming to this realization. We've been giving Nobel Prizes away since the 1920s for physicists who've been articulating this point of view. But it hasn't quite sort of filtered down into our mainstream understanding of reality.
And that's the thing, right? Is that it's still this very intellectual concept but we don't understand, because it would fundamentally, if we did start to integrate that understanding into our world, and like you said, understanding the primacy of consciousness, and that would fundamentally shift everything. That would change that would change everything about the way we operate in our daily lives. Not just the people who, meditate and the yogis, but if that was well integrated into our society, it would absolutely change everything.
You are so right. And this is the challenge of our time. And this is why I wanted to write a book like the Superyogi Scenario, in which it's a page turner, it's a thriller, it's a fun read. But you can see what characters who understand this wisdom can do to start to shape and transform their worlds, just to get these ideas, these seeds planted. Because not only is there this experience of suddenly you feeling your mind and your connection to your experience of the world, you understand the reason for it. And what it turns out to be is this: everything exists through cause and effect. Scientists would say the same thing. But depending on how you take care of others, that determines how the world takes care of you. There is this incredible relationship of cause and effect. So if you are kind and good to people, you plant good seeds that eventually ripen, not instantly, eventually ripen in a world that is good to you. And you see this wisdom again in the Yoga Sutra in chapter 2, verse 14. They say, there is a connection of cause and effect. The seeds ripen into experiences refreshingly pleasant or painful in their torment, depending on whether you have done good to others or done them wrong instead.
One of the things that the lessons that one of the characters needs to learn is to dissolve her ego. And that was a really, really important part for her to grasp the true nature of a reality and see beyond these, mental images. And I think that, again, that you're talking about the lessons of our time. I think getting over ourselves is part of this process as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things I wanted to do with the Superyogi Scenario is start with ordinary people who, because they're facing extraordinary circumstances, have to get their small self out of the way. You cannot transform into a super yogi. You can't transform into a superhero as long as you're clinging to your small, ordinary story of yourself. And that's a big part of the meditative path, of the yogic path. And so this particular character, who Ariel Davis, who is starts as an Air Force pilot and eventually ends up as Airspeed, a character that can fly without a machine, she has to learn how to get her ego out of the way and how her ordinary self out of the way in order that she can experience the deeper reality. And understanding deeper reality, put the causes into place that would allow her to fly without a machine.
And that's interesting because, as I talk about some of the psychic phenomenon and all of that's emerging in our culture, it is the physical aspects, like things like flying or super strength, those types of things that seem less plausible or seem further off. And I'm not sure. Do you know why that is?
Well, it starts with our conception of what is possible. And what I can say honestly to your listeners is the superpowers, the siddhas, as described in the Yoga Sutra and other Buddhist texts, and as there's so many historical examples of great masters that performed miracles. What's interesting is when you look inside the yoga texts and you look inside the Buddhist texts over the last 25 centuries, there hasn't been a single master that says that these powers don't exist. Further, there's been masters who have performed these miracles and then written books to explain precisely how they did it. So it's really interesting. But the siddhas themselves are actually a little bit more complicated because they first evolve as a psychological experience in meditation. Like there is a point when you reach true meditative stillness in which the pranic winds in your body, you feel them change out and your body becomes light as cotton. And then you feel like your mind is rising up, leaving your body. And you actually move to a higher meditative level, and you've left your body. And describing that as flying, as levitating, is like a very accurate way to describe what the psychological experience was like. So it's a very descriptive experience that happens to high-level meditators. Then you move to the next stage. Some meditators are able to manifest these things.
Well, you can hear, my break music is coming up, so I want to hear about that next stage, what happens. So we are talking to author James Conner, and you're listening to Entanglement Radio on the OMTimes Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment, a philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
All right, we are back, and you're listening to Entanglement Radio with Angela Levesque right here on the OMTimes Radio Network. We have James Conner on, and if you are a regular reader of OMTimes, he's actually on the cover last week, and we were talking about his book, The Superyogi Scenario. Well, before the break, I was talking about you were talking about the different stages, and the first stage in meditation is reaching that sort of what I call the still point, and then being able to feel that lightness, feeling like I think you described it as cotton, and then you were moving on to the next stage, which we didn't get to. So can you continue that?
We were talking about the complexity of how the supernormal abilities emerge, and it starts with a statement in the opening of chapter 4, verse 1 in Master Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, again written around 200 AD. He says, powers can be attained either at birth, through herbs, spells, extreme practices, or through deep meditation. And so what you find is that at first it is an expression of a psychological state that you reach in deep meditation. Then some masters go on to be able to manifest these things off the meditation cushion. But then the third stage is these things start to ripen environmentally. And this is something that we really have to appreciate. If you were to take Master Patanjali, a yogi from the 2nd or 3rd century, and bring them to our world today, they would think almost everyone walking on the planet had supernormal abilities. Because when you look at the traditional list of superpowers, being able to hear a conversation on the other side of the planet, we can do that, can't we? Mm-hmm. Being able to see an event happening far on the other side of the world, we can do that. Being able to fly in the sky, you can just get on an airplane and talk on your smartphone while you're sending texts. They would look at us and think that is miraculous. And so then they would move to their next question. And you see this in all of the great texts, all the meditation texts say, when these abilities start to emerge, the question will be, are you using them to serve others? Or are you using them for your own selfish purposes? And they always explain it is a great time of temptation for a yogi when these things start to emerge. And I think we're seeing that with our culture right now. We have abilities that are emerging. You can say, yes, they're emerging through technology. That's the how. That isn't the why. But just in the last 20 years, there are miraculous abilities emerging among this population. And are we using them to serve others, or are we using them just to entertain ourselves?
Well, that was an interesting thing that came up for me, because obviously when you're writing a fiction book, you need the protagonist and the antagonist. And part of the hard part for me with the antagonist in the story is just that if you reached that level where you had those type of abilities, I would think that you would have to be this very enlightened being, and it wouldn't even cross your mind to use those for, abuse of power and exploitation or, murder or whatever. It just seems that you would be so beyond that. But, maybe if you, like you said, if you look around and see how we're using some of these things in just horrible, horrible ways against each other, against our earth, then maybe that's not the case. Maybe I'm too much of an idealist.
Well, again, it's more complex, and we have to appreciate where it happens in the stage of psychic development. So again, if you look at the Yoga Sutra, the 3rd chapter is the chapter on mystic powers. The 4th chapter goes on, and by what it discusses, it clearly implies, don't get stuck at the 3rd chapter. Don't get stuck with just supernormal abilities. Go on to eliminate all negativities from the mind. Go on to eliminate all ignorance from the mind and serve other beings. That's really what the 4th chapter is about. And so again, when we look historically, when you study the historical examples of lineage masters that supernormal abilities start to emerge from, not all of them use their powers for good all the time. Tibet's favorite saint is Milarepa, great lineage holder, someone who achieved enlightenment in this lifetime. But early in his life, when he developed supernormal abilities, he used them to gain revenge for his family being oppressed and brought a landslide down upon the people that oppressed his family. And then he felt such regret for the harm and misery that he brought down on those people that he turned to sincere spiritual practice to repent for that. And he's kind of the model for physique in the Superyogi scenario. So these stories are the path to enlightenment is not always a straight line.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely the truth. One of the things that you brought up in the book that I just had to sit and think about for a while. So there's a story where two of the characters, one of them is teaching Ariel how to develop her powers and such, and she needs to have a break. So they end up going to a movie that's in 3D. And going back to that idea of the illusion, you say something in the book. It says, what will happen when we can no longer tell the difference between deceptive illusions from what we call normal reality, which in itself is an illusion? And I think that that's such an interesting, relevant conversation right now with emerging technologies where, things are now popping up in 3D where you can get glasses that allow you to play video games and feel like you're in a virtual world. And so that's like an illusion wrapped in another illusion. And what do you think the consequence of that is?
I actually think it's quite wonderful because it gives us a window into better understanding our world. And let's just play our game again. You happen in your studio, do you have like a pen?
Yes. I'm holding it right now.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So you see that object as a pen. Now just imagine if a puppy dog came in the room and you showed that to them. What would the puppy dog see it as?
Just a long stick or something. It wouldn't have the same meaning.
Good. And what would they do with that long stick?
Maybe put it in their mouth or completely ignore it.
Yeah. It would look like a chew toy to them. And they would not have the conception pen. So there we have two realities existing simultaneously. You see it as a pen. They see it as a chew toy. And notice that the puppy dog doesn't even have the mental concept of pen. Two different realities, one room. And this is the way everything is in our world. There may be something out there, but we never see it. We only see our object based on our unique causes in our mind. And so there's always these two layers going on. We could say there's the deceptive reality layer because it looks real, it functions beautifully, and we take it to be the only way it is. But then when we look and analyze a little bit more, underneath it is the ultimate reality level. It's available to be anything depending on the causes in our heart. Now, some of your listeners might be saying, well, that's just humans and that's puppy dogs. But Angela, take the cap off your pen.
Okay.
What happens if you take that object and throw it on the floor of cell block 13 in a prison somewhere?
Then it's an escape tool.
It's an escape tool. That's a nice way to put it. It could also be a weapon.
Yes.
So depending on the causes in your heart, you're seeing that object differently. And again, we're proving continuously this interdependence. And so if people can start to realize it looks real, it functions perfectly, but it's based on my mind interpreting it. then we have a deeper wisdom about how reality actually functions. And hopefully it will reveal there is a interconnection. And that's why I have to be moral. That's why I have to take care of people. There's a beautiful verse I love in the Yoga Sutra. It says, if you make it a way of life never to hurt others, then in your presence, all conflict comes to an end.
That's beautiful. And, as we have this, and maybe now I'm listening to you, and maybe you're the idealist, because as I'm listening to this, and going back to that conversation where my son and I are creating planets, and he created a planet that has inherent strife and war, and as we talk about these illusions and these virtual realities, to me, it limits what we think is possible. Like, he created a world that has strife and death and murder and inherent in it, because that's how he, even, at 6 years old when he was having this conversation, that's how he understood reality to be. And so there was nothing outside of that. There was nothing bigger than that. And so going back to what you were saying about basically the intention in your heart, sometimes I feel like we limit what is possible. And that's why I think books like yours is so fantastic, because it opens us up to something bigger than ourselves, but in a much more beautiful and sacred way, instead of it being the shoot, 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 kill, 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 like you'd see on the Avengers or whatever it is. There is a connection to the sacred and morality and all of that, which to me is where we need to go with this spiritual technology, if we want to call it that.
And it is a technology. It is cause and effect. And if you can get to that place where you can discover, particularly in meditation, that the world is unlimited potential, that we are unlimited in our potential, and depending on the causes we put in our hearts, we can create a better future.
Well, that's a good place to end. When we get back, I want to ask you if you are a superhero and what powers you possess. I think that's a fantastic conversation. So we'll get to that and more here with James Connor on Entanglement Radio on the OMTimes Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
Matt Connerton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connerton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connerton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, my name is Monica and I'm the host of Co-Creating Now. Give yourself an opportunity to connect with your all-knowing higher self and manifest joy, love, and peace together every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
We are back here. You're listening to Entanglement Radio with Angela Levesque in the last segment that I like to call Bite-Sized Brilliance, brought to you by Hestia Health, where we specialize in conscious weight loss, energy medicine, and intuitive lifestyle counseling. This is the part of the program where we like to bring it on home. Before the break, I wanted to ask you, because I think this is an interesting question. Do you think of yourself as a superhero or an emerging superhero? And if so, what powers do you possess?
For me, what I concentrate on in my practice is, do I have love in my heart for everyone, no matter how they treat me? And do I have discerning wisdom that there is a connection between how I treat people and what I'm going to experience in reality? And for me, that's enough to concentrate on and practice with.
Well, absolutely. Compassion. I mean, that love in your heart for everyone, that is, like you said, an incredible ability in itself. If more of us had that, I don't think we'd be where we're at. When you were growing up, well, who was your favorite superhero?
I have to say, I always liked Superman. I was really attracted to Superman. But lately, my appreciation for Wonder Woman has really grown. And I think the reason is, in the Superyogi Scenario, when I was writing it, it was because I was doing long meditation retreats. And doing these retreats, the metaphor of superheroes, where the virtuous part of your mind is trying to overcome the negative emotions of your mind. When you first start meditating, your mind is kind of a grimy place. It's like Gotham, and Batman and the Joker are punching and kicking, and the Joker's got 100 tricks to get you off your meditation object. And then later you get a little stronger and you're more like Superman. But the kryptonite is if you have any anger in your heart, if there's somebody that you have resentment towards or haven't forgiven, that wipes you out. That blocks you from the higher levels of meditation. So you have that real experience of, oh, there's the kryptonite. But then in the final stages of meditation, I think you become more like Wonder Woman, because you're just able to lasso the parts of your mind that are acting villainous and just make them tell the truth.
I love that. So, as I said, this is the part where we like to bring it on home. So, what do you hope that people take away from reading the Superyogi Scenario?
The main message of the Superyogi Scenario is powers don't make someone super. Putting other people first, that's what makes them a hero. And so I think we can all look at our own lives, and we can all do more to get our small selves out of the way so we can really connect with the people in our lives, really listen to them, really see what they need, and really serve them and be heroes in that way.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that I thought was interesting, and it made me think, when the bystanders saw people, using their superpowers, for example, when they saw Ariel save that child and she was flying and she comes and she lands back down on the bridge, and the bystanders are looking at her, not like, wow, she just did something heroic. They were looking at her like they were scared and fearful, like she was some alien. And I wonder, as more people awaken, as more people get connected with the center of themselves and dissolve their ego, are we ready for these types of things to start showing up and for us to start seeing that?
Again, I looked historically at the stories of like the Mahasiddhas, great realized beings, both in the Buddhist and the yoga lineage, and the miracles that they were performing. And I looked at the historical reactions to this. And you can see it similarly in the Bible. The question wasn't, is Jesus performing a miracle? They had seen miracles. The question was he doing it in the name of God, or was he doing it in the name of the devil? And so, I tried to ground it in what has been our historic experience when miracles have been performed. And it's a lot more complex, and I think people will enjoy that complexity in the Superyogi Scenario.
So one thing, you mentioned Jesus, and in the Bible, right, there's the parting of the seas, there's walking on water, you talk about being able to move mountains. So this isn't just something that's part of the Yoga Sutras. This has been something, those miracles, the many loaves and all of that. So as people are listening to our conversation and maybe not feel a resonance with the Yoga Sutras or Buddhist philosophy, and is there still a way to reach this place that you're talking about that's outside of Buddhism or outside of yoga?
Yeah, and one of the characters, one of the super yogis in the book is a Benedictine priest, Father Agua. And he, because of his identification so strongly with Jesus and because of his meditations on Jesus, starts to take on some of his qualities, like being able to do miraculous things with water. And we have to remember, Jesus is constantly talking about cause and effect. Jesus says you can't get can't get figs from thorns. And what he's teaching is the laws of karma there. Good deeds will always create good results. Bad deeds will always create bad results. There's a relationship of cause and effect. He says things like, put your sword back in its place. Everyone who uses a sword will be killed by a sword. Cause and effect. When I read Jesus' teachings now, I see a remarkable teacher teaching about this relationship. How you treat others will determine the reality you create. And so this wisdom doesn't belong to any one religion. Love and wisdom don't belong to any one religion. And I wanted to make that point in the Superyogi Scenario.
Yes, because I think that some of the things that you were talking about, like you said, your superpower would be to love everyone regardless of how they teach. That, to me, that, like you said, doesn't belong to just one religion or one teacher. And I think I've had many people on the show who have talked about the similarities between a lot of the ancient texts and religions, and that the foundation of that, Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? There's so many similarities, and I think that there's probably many paths to get to the point, to the things that you're talking about.
It's beautiful that we have those teachings in the world, and they resonate in our heart. And again, that's why I think superheroes are coming to the forefront. Because in our heart, we know we need to become more like these archetypes that are able to love and protect other beings, no matter how they treat us. And that's very much modeled by someone like Jesus.
And as we see it now that Disney owns Marvel, we can expect a whole bunch more of superheroes. And I hope that they, these are based on source material of, DC and Marvel Comics or whatever. But I'd hope that we start to see more selfless and benevolence in our superheroes that are rising up to the collective consciousness. Well, we are almost, we have a few minutes left, so I want to give you plenty of opportunity to share where people can learn more about you and find your book, and anything else you'd like to leave my readers with today, or my listeners, sorry.
No, I certainly want to thank OMTimes. I mean, they have been a great supporter of this book. It was very kind of OMTimes magazine to put me on their cover 2 weeks ago and to do a nice interview and an excerpt from the book. It's great to be on your show. So OMTimes has been a great friend to the Superyogi Scenario. I'm excited to report that the reviews have just been over the top. People are really excited about this book. So you can get this book at Amazon.com, and Barnes & Noble just put in a big order, so it's rolling out to all the major booksellers. If you have Kindle Unlimited or you have Amazon Prime, I put the book in the lending library, so you can even download it for free. So I just encourage you to check it out for yourself and come to your own conclusions about what is possible for the human mind.
And you have a website as well. Is that something you'd like to share?
Sure. You can learn more about the Superyogi Scenario at bymjamesconnor.com, BY, James Connor, CONNOR.com. And also, I have a nonprofit with my partner, Kristen Walsh, called gobeyond.org. And we teach people who want to go further how to meditate from authentic scriptural sources. And we have big free meditation modules with video teachings and scriptural sources and guided audio. And you can check that out at gobeyond.org.
Well, James, thank you so much for being on this program. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Again, that was James Conner, the Superyogi Scenario. Coming up next week, we have what I would call a real-life superhero, Lisa Martin Nyami, and we are going to be talking about the light, the dark, and the void. And she's going to talk about our understanding of multidimensional realms and all sorts of really cool stuff that, is just over my head, but we're going to make it easy for us to understand. And coming up next here on the OMTimes Radio Network, we have Claire Johnson, and she has a program, Equilibrium FM. So if you need to get a hold of me at any time during the week, you can email me at angela@hestiahealth.com. You can find me on Facebook and on Twitter. We say congratulations again to Carla for winning the free intuitive reading with me. And if you would like to get in on that, you can just send out a tweet, #Entanglement Radio, or you can go to my Facebook page at Hestia Health and Entanglement Radio and just say hello and that you are a listener. And I will put all those names into a hat and announce the winner at the first of every month. You can hear my show every week at 12 p.m. Eastern right here on the OMTimes Radio Network. This is Angela Levesque wishing you love and light. I'll see you guys next week.
Your conscious lifestyle.